Hello, welcome to my kitchen. Today we're going to teach you how to make pizza. And that's where the Christopher Walken impression stops. So we are going to teach you how to make pizza today from scratch. We're going to make the dough from scratch. We're going to let it rise. We're going to show you how to spread the dough and then put the ingredients on, cook it, and eat it. Enjoy. Okay, so the ingredients for making the pizza dough. Of course, one of the most important ingredients is going to be your flour, and I have another bag because we're going to need about 3 cups. The next important ingredient is going to be your yeast. The yeast is what helps the bread get fluffy and rise, and we're using Fleischmann's yeast today, and I only need 1 packet for it. A couple of the other ingredients are going to be salt, some warm water, and some olive oil. We will use this in a couple of the places in the making of this pizza. Another couple of important pieces for making the pizza, of course, are the mixer. All right, we have just a regular KitchenAid mixer here, the mixing bowl, and then you're going to need one of these doohickeys. This is a dough maker or a dough spreader. I don't even know what they call this, but you don't want to use this guy. You don't want to use this guy. This guy, the hook. Like a pirate. Arr. Okay, so making the dough. The first thing I did is I put some hot water in this guy just to get it warmed up. Alright, so we're going to take 1.5 cups of warm water. Now usually I'm just to take a cup, put it in, fill it about halfway, close enough. But for the making of this video, I'll go ahead and use the cup and the 1/2 cup to fill them up. Let's try not to spill this. There we go. There's 1 cup. Here's a 1/2 cup. All right, so the next thing that we're putting into this mixture is going to be the yeast. The yeast. Get it all to the bottom. Take my lovely scissors and throw the yeast in. Okay. There she is. All the yeast is in there. All right, we'll set this to the side for now. Now I'm going to need 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Now, of course, again, I'm usually the guy that uses just a full teaspoon and fills it about halfway. We'll follow the rules today. I will break them in a second, though. Just you watch. There's your 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Olive oil. We need 3/4 teaspoon of olive oil, but I don't have a 3/4 teaspoon, so I got to use my judgment. And honestly, I think if you use a whole teaspoon or a half, it's not going to be that detrimental to your recipe. So here we go. There's, it's probably a little bit more on the full teaspoon side. Okay, so we got that done. Get this out of the way, and then what we're going to do, I'm going to grab a little whisk from in here. One thing you didn't get to hear was all the MFers I was throwing when I couldn't find the dang measuring spoon. So we go ahead and mix that up, all right? Let the yeast and everything kind of dissolve in the water. Mix and mix and mix. Let the salt and the oils dissolve in the water. Our next steps is going to be putting the flour in. Be right with you. One important thing is to make sure if you're using the same cup for your water and your flour, dry it out. Otherwise you get flour just, stuck in the cup, and yeah, it's a pain in the butt. Okay, so one thing you'll find is that when you start dealing with the flour, it's going to go everywhere. Just understand the fact that things are going to get a little dirty and you'll have to clean up a little later. So I've already got 1 cup in the pan, or in the bowl. I'm going to go ahead and put my 2nd cup of flour in. Okay. Now this recipe calls for 3 cups, but if you put all 3 cups in to begin with and you start this thing mixing, it turns into a holy mess. Oh, and it would be helpful to take this attachment off before you put the bowl on, because otherwise you'll never get the bowl on. So, here we go. Put this guy on. See if I can hold my mouth right. Alright. Now, start it off, on like a 1 or a 2. And we're going to let that mix until it starts to mix in, and then you can start adding the 3rd cup. Alright? Now, one of the things that you might have to do while it's mixing is you might have to scrape down some of the flour around the sides of the bowl. And so I highly suggest that you turn it off. All right, because the last thing you want to do is get your spatula stuck in there when that hooky thing grabs it and twists you into a pretzel, because that motor's pretty strong. So go ahead and push some of this stuff down, all right, to help it get mixed up a bit more thoroughly. And this is, if you make a smaller batch, you may have trouble mixing it up in one of these mixers, just because of the fact that it doesn't have the depth to get in and really mix everything. Actually, making a double dose makes it easier, but today we're just going to make the single. Okay, it's starting to mix together okay. So we're going to go ahead and slowly add in the third cup. And keep that in mind, 1.5 cups of water to 3 cups of flour. 2-to-1 ratio. Alright, that's it. So now we're going to go ahead and do the same thing where we help it out, we'll turn it off, we'll push down the sides. And I would admit to getting adventurous and doing this while the beater's running, but that's unsafe and I don't want to see anybody get hurt. So don't do that. Turn it off, move it. It's just a few extra seconds that you have to spend to make this mix a little bit more evenly. Turn it back on. And what you're going to end up seeing is as this starts to really mix together, you're going to see the ball start to move around in a funny pattern inside the bowl. I'll show you that in a second. Alright, you starting to see this? Oh, out of shot. Okay, so you can see the dough ball starting to move around. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and shut this off again and help some of that flour get in there to make sure it all mixes properly. Okay, so the dough is done mixing. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to take the old hook off, set that aside. We'll end up washing that later. Take the bowl out. Okay, now I'm going to get this onto a cutting board because I'm dividing this in two. Now for working the dough, the best situation is when you just have one dough ball. It's nice and round and it works easy. But I want to make 2 pizzas, so I'm going to go ahead and get this all out. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that you do want this to be a little sticky. And you can see this stuff sticking to the bone. The reason why you want it a little sticky is because it spreads a little better when you're actually making the crust itself. So, I've got this out of the bowl. I'm going to go ahead and just take a knife or a pizza cutter. We're going to cut it in half. Now this, of course, is very sticky, so it cuts interestingly. Now, this dough needs to rise. So I'm going to take this dough, and I'm going to put it in 2 separate bowls. Now, both of these bowls I have lined with olive oil. I put about a tablespoon in, and then took a napkin or a paper towel, and spread it all around. I'm going to put it in. All right, here's your dough ball. And I'm going to go ahead and get a little gloppy with olive oil. Okay, nice little dough ball. Do the same thing with this one here. Same thing. I think this one has a little bit more olive oil in it. That's okay though, because when we make the pizza dough, we're going to use flour to help with that stickiness and help to be able to work it. So here's your 2 dough balls. We're going to let these set for 1 hour. All right, and they're going to grow because of the yeast. And then when we come back, we'll go ahead and show you how to make the dough into a pizza. Okay, so the next step in preparing the pizza is to get the pans ready. So I take a little olive oil, boop, pour a little bit onto the pan, maybe a tablespoon or so. Oop, that was a bit much. It's okay though, because then we're going to take a paper towel and we're going to spread it thin. Alright, then go over to the other one, do the same thing. Now this is one of those non-stick pizza pans, so it kind of beads up. It's okay. You can have a little extra olive oil in there, and I make sure I get it around the edges and even on the lip here too, right? So that none of the dough sticks to it. lips, the edges. There we go. Okay. So then the next step is to pour a little bit of cornmeal onto the pan. Now this is what you typically notice on your pizzas, and you're just going to sprinkle it on there. Kind of helps to keep the pizza from sticking and gives it a nice little texture on the bottom. So literally just dusting the cornmeal. All right. So dusting, and you can overdo it a little bit. It won't hurt much. Just gonna have a little bit of extra cornmeal in the bottom. You can always wipe it off the bottom of your pizza. Okay, so this is where the magic happens. This is where we make our dough. I got my dough rising on top of the refrigerator because I don't want my dogs to get to it. As you know, rising dough can be very poisonous for your dogs. Don't let them eat it. There's a story over the holidays where somebody left their dough sitting on the low counter. The dog ate it and they had to take him to the hospital. It wasn't a good thing. Dog lived, so that was good. All right, so I got 2 bowls of dough here. I like to think that they're cut in equal spacing. Now what I'm going to do here, I've wiped my counter down. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to pour some flour on here. Yeah, be liberal with it. The intent is that you're going to set the dough into the flour and then start to toss it. Not really toss it. We're just going to spread it. I tried tossing dough once. Flour went everywhere. It was a huge mess. So we set the dough in the flour, like so. We flip it over. We set it again. All right. Now, this dough has arisen. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to go ahead and make little finger marks to kind of push out where the edges of the dough are going to be. All right. Kind of like so. And then we're going to work it. We're going to start spreading it with our hands. All right, like so. Spread it with our hands like so, and you see the flour here starting to spread. All right. You're going to spread it. Now you of course don't want to spread it bigger than your pan, but I know that from the past pizzas that I've made that this dough, this amount of dough, is not going to be bigger than my pan. This is going to be 13 or 14 inches. Actually, this looks almost perfect right here. So, I'm going to transfer this to the pan. Now, I don't really have a good way of doing this, so if anybody wants to send a comment, feel free. But I'm just going to pick it up. Oh, here's the dough, here's the dough. All right. Put it on the pan. Spread it to size. And this actually is covering an entire 16-inch pan. This is going to be a very thin crust pizza, very thin crust, which a lot of us in Wisconsin like. Me, I like a little bit more bread, but that's okay. So you see here I got a pan covered in dough. This is perfect. I'm going to do the same thing to the other piece of dough and get it out of this pan. So I got enough flour still sitting on my counter, and so here we go. Even though you put the oil in the pan, you still got to kind of peel it away. This one I'm going to go ahead and do a few times because this dough is pretty wet. So here we go. We're going to go ahead and push out, right? Create the little finger marks to create the dough edges. All right, now we're going to spread. That's all you do is you just spread your hands as you turn it. Spread your hands as you turn it. And if you have a nice, soft dough, this is really easy. Typically, I like to ferment the dough in the refrigerator for 24 hours. And if you do that, you have to make sure to put saran wrap on the dough. Otherwise, the dough dries out. This becomes a nightmare. Spreading the dough, turning it, spreading it. This is spreading phenomenally. Phenomenally. In case you didn't know how that word was pronounced. Grab the other pan. Here we go. I'm going to go ahead and pick it up. Luckily, this stuff's pliable, so you can pick it up, set it back down, I don't like to have too many folds in it, but you know, like I say, if you have any suggestions on how to make me do this better, I'm all ears. But you could even, once it's in the pan, just start spreading it so that you get a little bit more dough around the edges to create a little bit more crust. But here we have a nice spread pizza dough, and we're ready to start putting sauce on. So here's the next step in the process: flavoring the crust. I've taken the liberty of opening some of the ingredients that I'll need. I put some olive oil in a bowl, open up all my cheeses for when I go ahead and put the rest of the toppings on. Open the spaghetti sauce, which exploded on me and got all over my shirt. So a few expletives later, yeah, we're ready to go. The wife's gonna have to put some of that spray on my shirt before we wash it. But anyways, got a little brush. Go ahead and brush the crust, right? I may need a little bit of olive oil, and you can be generous with the olive oil here because it just seems to absorb in anyways. Spread it on, spread it on. Yeah, once you bake it, I mean, this does not become like greasy or anything like that. This pizza is furthest thing from being greasy. So go ahead and spread it on all around the crust, and you can go a little bit inboard of the crust, right? Because you know where the crust ends, essentially where the cheese and the sauce starts. So that's all up to you. I'm going to pour a little bit more olive oil in here. There we go. That should be enough. Continue spreading this along the crust. And I guess, you know, I've never tried it, but I'm sure you could use other oils, vegetable oil, butter, right? Butter's got that little bit of a salty flavor. Butter and Parmesan probably would taste excellent, but we've always used the olive oil variety. And in case you're wondering, we just use the basic, you know, Sam's Club olive oil, nothing special. All right, so now we're going to use some Parmesan cheese, some grated Parmesan, and just spread it around the edges, like so. And again, you can get a little bit outside of the edges because then it's just going to go on the pizza, and who doesn't want a little bit more Parmesan on their pizza? I know I always do. So here we go, Parmesan, da, da, da. Okay, just about there. It's getting a little clumpy, so I gotta restart it. And, here we go. Okay, Parmesan's done. That in the fridge. Now, I'm going to put the sauce on. And it doesn't take a lot of sauce. You don't want to make pizza soup. Although I think pizza soup sounds really good. If anybody has a recipe for pizza soup, put it in the comments, please. Here we go. So, I pour almost half of this. And then I spread it around a little bit. And then you do just the old circular yada yada yada, moving it around. Ooh, a little aggressive on the dough there. Be mindful when you're doing this not to tear your dough up too much. Although it's not going to hurt you, it's not going to kill it. I'm going to go ahead and spread this around. Right. With a thicker dough, it's easier to spread this around and be a little bit more aggressive and just blah, blah, blah. So I'm going to go ahead and put some on the other dough. Make sure to get more around the outside so you can spread it a little bit more gingerly. And there I am, just being a barbarian as usual. And mucking up the crust, but I'll tell you what, this is going to be okay. So we keep spreading, pour a little bit more on. Here we go. I'm going to put more on here. I'm going to try and finish this out, get this spread a little bit around the edges some, and then use the sauce ladle to spread it out. Okay. Here we go. And I'm trying to keep, oh, you hear my dogs. Bet you the wife's home. We may have to continue this in a minute. may have to hit the little pause button and restart. But the sauce is damn near spread. The dog gets so excited when Grandma's home. Let me tell you. Happy to see her. And there she is. Okay, now that the wife's home and the dogs are done barking, we can continue making our pizza. So we've got the sauce all spread, and like I said, leaving the crust, our Parmesan crust, we're gonna go ahead and put the cheese on. So the important part here with the cheese is that you purchase the bold cut. You don't want the thinly cut cheese, because if you buy that and you put it on your pizza, 420 degrees is going to burn. All right, so I buy two kinds of cheese, mozzarella, and this is a 2-cheese Italian blend. If you can get a multiple cheese, that's the best way to go, because then it has more of that fragrant Parmesan or what have you. This one has mozzarella and provolone. So I'll go ahead and spread about half on this guy. And when I say I buy the cheese, I mean my wife, who's standing behind the camera, buys the cheese. She's being very quiet over there because I asked her to. Oh, here she comes. This is my lovely wife, Gail.
Hello.
Gail buys all the ingredients, and I do all the cooking.
Not all of it.
She cooks during the week, I cook on the weekend, because that's when she works and makes the big money. So here we go. We're going to go ahead and put all the cheese on. Now it's the 2-cheese blend. And sometimes I find that, you know, I don't get as much coverage as I want. You'd be surprised as to how this cheese spreads. But I still get an extra bag of mozzarella just in case it doesn't spread enough. So we're spreading the cheese, I've got the last of this cheese here. All right, and there's a few bare spots. I like cheese. I like a lot of cheese, as you can tell. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna put a little bit of mozzarella. Now this isn't that really thin cut stuff. It's not the bold cut stuff. However, it's not too thin to put on a pizza. So here I'm just kind of filling in the gaps. Anywhere I see sauce, I go ahead and put a little bit of cheese on. And yeah, it's okay if you get some on the crust. It's not going to be a big deal. Well, if you want to cover the whole damn thing in cheese, that's your prerogative. Remember, this is all about your personal preference. So you make the pizza how you want. There we got the cheese spread. I think that's pretty good. Okay, I'm going to put this cheese away. I'm going to grab the Parmesan, because I'm going to go ahead and sprinkle some Parmesan on this. That's going to make it taste awesome. Alright, so here again we got the Parmesan. We're spreading that on there. You can be as generous as you like. As you see, I am a generous individual. That was a lot of Parmesan. And next up, we'll put the toppings. Okay, now it's time to add the ingredients. So the first ingredients that I like to add, of course, are the pepperoni. This is going to take Okay, so your choice of pepperoni is your own. I mean, they make many kinds of pepperoni. It's not a big deal. You can choose whatever kind you want. So the next thing we're going to put on here is going to be bacon bits. Now, don't overdo it with the bacon bits, because even though bacon's awesome, it can get a little salty and really kill your pizza. So I am just spreading this on sparingly. Kind of like you put pepper on your food, you know, a little sparingly. Alright? And the good thing is, there's always like leftover bacon bits to put on whatever you want later on. If you're going to have a baked potato or what have you. Maybe you're going to make some scrambled eggs or an omelet, put a little bit of bacon bits on it. So we also like to have mushrooms. I've washed these already, so I'm going to put them on whole. I'm not going to, why I say whole, they're already chopped. But once you start cooking them, they do shrink up quite a bit. So put these on here. Make sure we got them spread out enough so everyone gets a little bit. And make sure you wash these things off because they do have some dirt on them. Alright. A little bit of mushrooms. Now normally we make our pizzas with peppers, and onions, and olives, and pretty much everything, you know, but the kitchen sink, and anchovies. But today we're going a little bit lighter. So the last thing I'm going to put on is going to be tomatoes. Now we use Campari tomatoes. Campari. Because this is what my wife loves. Why do we use Campari tomatoes?
They have a really good flavor.
They got a good flavor,
for the
okay.
pizza.
And they do, you know, and of course this is all to taste. You don't have to use any of this stuff. You can use just pepperoni. You can put, you know, your pepperoni and your sausage. You can put your mushrooms on, whatever you want. The bottom line is, this is all to taste from this point on. And that is it. The pizzas are done and ready to be baked. Now all you have to do is set the oven for 420 degrees and cook them for about 15 minutes, but check on them once in a while. I like to take a spatula under the dough after about 10 minutes, lift it up a little to see if it's starting to brown. If it's still pale white, let it cook a little longer. If you see it starting to get gold, then it's ready to come out. Okay, so the pizzas are made, the oven's ready to go. We're going to go ahead and put them in 420 degrees. Again, 10 to 20 minutes. Check it often after 10 minutes to make sure that it's not burning on you. Whatever. So here we go. One. And here's the other. Okay. The pizzas are in. Alright, so now it's the moment of truth. We're pulling the pizzas out. They're ready. They're baked. Good to eat. Let's get them out of here. Oh, glass is fogged up. Here's the eins. That's one. Oh, look at that pizza. That's two. Two delicious pizzas. Let's show you these. And they're still sizzling. Oh my God. Perfection. So the next step is to cut them up. And now, ladies and gentlemen, this pizza is ready to eat. Ready for you to take a good slice and eat it. Stuff it right in your mouth and eat it. Thank you, and you have a good night. So one note I want to make about the pizza is I think I said 15 minutes for the baking. I think we had ours in there for about 25 minutes for two thin crust pizzas. Now keep in mind we had two of them in there. And also we use Campari tomatoes, which add a lot of moisture, which will then take away from the heat that goes towards the dough. But just utilize the outer dough. Press on that. If it starts to get a little stiff, that's when you know it's starting to get done. But we ate it. It was delicious. Oh my God. Enjoy.